I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while now. It's been kind of a question that's been on my mind, and so I wanted to put it to the test. Should you rake a mousse through your hair, or should you be kind of glazing it over and scrunching it in at the end of your routine? I've used mousses both ways, and so I thought to put it to the test, take one particular mousse and do both with it. So in one routine, I scrunched it in one routine, I raked it through my hair. We're gonna talk about the differences in the routines, if there is any, and at the end, we will talk about what my thoughts are as to whether or not you should be doing one or the other. I have done a similar video to this in the past, where I compared gel as to whether or not you should rake or glaze the gel over your hair. It might be time to redo that one. Let me know if you want me to redo it, because at the time I hadn't really quite realized just how different the curl patterns are on both sides of my head. So when I was doing comparisons, I was doing like a split comparison, but I always left the left side wanting. So whatever I put on that side was always the bad side. And so it might be time to redo it, but with two separate wash days instead of a split side. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, let's go ahead and get into this particular video. If you do like content like this, please do like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. And if you are new to my channel, hi, my name is Lena, and welcome to my bathroom. Starting off, I always like to go into these comparisons by showing you my results first, with one caveat. I'm not going to tell you which one is which wash day. The reason I do this is because it's really easy to take those preconceived notions. Like, let's say for me personally, I prefer to rake products through my hair. So if I saw both and I knew which one was the rake routine, I might try to nitpick and find reasons to make that my favorite wash day. But if you don't know, you're more likely to be able to pick based off of your preferences for the results, not necessarily for the styling routine itself. So that being said, here is wash day number 1. And here is wash day number 2. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's move into the actual wash day routines and the results themselves. I do like to start with talking about the wash days, but this one probably won't be quite as detailed as a lot of my comparison videos, because a lot of the time when I'm comparing two different products, I like to talk about the texture of the product, the smell of the product, things that they're claiming on the product. We're not really going to do that here because both wash days were similar enough. I used similar enough products. The mousse was exactly the same. The main difference between the products themselves is I'm pretty sure on the first routine, I used the Eva NYC Main Magic because I didn't have this product yet. I did go out and get the Not Your Mother's Curl Talk Leave-In Conditioner. It helps to detangle your hair, hydrate your hair, and it has heat protectant in it as well, which is awesome. So I decided to use this on the second routine. I also thought about going in with like a curl cream or something like that, but I really wanted to make this as bare bones as possible so we can really see what the difference between techniques is doing all by itself. Because with a curl cream, that's going to kind of even the playing field just a little bit. I do want to drop this in here really quickly, hopefully as a helpful tip so you can keep track of things a little bit better. Wash day number 1, I wore pink. Wash day number 2, I wore blue. So starting off, for both of these routines, I did wash my hair and came in with it very thoroughly wet. Now, the difference here is for wash day number 1, I started off with the Eva NYC Main Magic 10-in-1 primer because I've been trying to get better about using a primer, a heat protectant, something to protect my hair while I'm diffusing. Spritz that in, brushed it through, and then I sectioned my hair. And on the very bottom, I went in with the Not Your Mother's Curl Talk Curl Activating Mousse. I took some of this in my hand, started working between. The fun thing about this particular mousse is a lot of mousses, when you start to work them between your hands, they do really break down into a more serumy texture. This one does not. It stays pretty foamy and bubbly and almost kind of creamy. So I took that in my hand, worked it between, and then raked it through that bottom section before going in with my Bounce Curl defining brush to define that bottom section. On this particular wash day, I think I may have had a little bit more hard time keeping my hair wet enough, so I may have gone in with a spray bottle to make sure that I got that squelching sound, because that's important for any routine that I do. It just helps my hair personally with frizz and texture and things like that. So spritzed my hair down, scrunched it, got that squelching sound, moved on to the next section. Again, raking that mousse through my hair, defining with a brush, going in with water as I needed and moving all the way up through the top. And then at that point, that's where I did microplop, and I did glaze a little bit more of the mousse over the top after microplopping to help give me a little bit more hold before going into diffusing. The main difference between wash day number 1 and wash day number 2 is with wash day number 2, I didn't go in with the leave-in conditioner first. I actually went in with this in sections. I sectioned my hair into 3, took a little bit of the leave-in conditioner into my hand, raked that through, and I used this as my kind of defining product to some extent. So when you're brush styling, it is really good idea to make sure you have at least a product in your hair that's going to add some amount of slip to it. It's just going to help protect your hair from things like breakage. It makes it a much smoother process. So put that in, went in with a brush, defined the bottom section, worked my way up through the top of my head with just that leave-in conditioner and my brush. And when I got to the top, before I microplopped, I did go in with a mousse. So I took some of it in my hand, worked it down, glazed it over, and then scrunched it in, flipped to the other side and did the same. And then I microplopped at that point, getting as much moisture out as possible. I went in with just a little bit more of the mousse over the top at that point, because that's been pretty beneficial for me to help give me extra hold, because when you're squishing out that water, sometimes some of the product comes out too. So at that point, I did then go in and diffuse. And for both of these routines, I diffused about the same amount of time, somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes, before coming back and clipping my hair up and away with these clips I found on Amazon. Just helps keep my hair out of my face, as well as potentially giving me a little bit more volume. Let it finish air drying the rest of the way. I'm pretty sure on both of these routines, I did get some sort of cast on my hair. The first routine, I got a pretty strong cast, and by the time I came back, it was kind of softened. There were a couple places that were crunchy, and it was pretty similar on the second routine. I did get a cast after diffusing my hair. By the time I came back to fluff it up a couple of hours later, it had softened up in most places. So I fluffed and I scrunched on both of these routines. And again, here are my results, but I'm going to do a split screen side by side. So again, pink is raking it through my hair and blue is glazing it over my hair. All right, hopefully y'all are seeing what I'm saying, but the results kind of speak for themselves. They are very different. Let's go ahead and get into the comparisons. Starting off with the volume. Personally, I noted a huge difference in volume, and that is that the routine where I glazed the mousse over my hair gave me a lot more volume, like a lot. In fact, when I raked the product through my hair, it aired a lot more on the side of flat. Especially for me, I tend to get at least kind of a decent level of volume because if I have a higher density of hair. Moving into texture, I have 2 different textures to my hair. I have waves up top, and I have curls down on the bottom. So we can kind of split that up and talk about how this affects the waves and the curls differently. So for the wavy section, honestly, you'll have to let me know what your thoughts are. I didn't note a huge difference between the waves and the raking routine versus the glazing routine. For both of them, I was actually pretty happy with the amount of texture I got. They looked pretty similar and comparable. However, the big difference happens when we start to look at the curls down on the bottom. When I raked the product through my hair, I got a lot bigger clumps. The curls really turned into these sausagey clumps and held much tighter together. Whereas when I glazed the mousse over my hair at the end of the routine, I got a lot more separation in those curls. I got a lot more smaller clumps. That's going to help with the volume, right? Now, I could have gone back in on the first routine, on the routine where I raked it through and kind of separated those clumps out if I wanted to for a little bit more volume. But that's, again, one other step. So something to keep in mind too is when you get these bigger clumps of curls down on the bottom, is it makes your hair look a lot sparser. So like I said, yes, I could go in and separate those out and kind of help fill it out a little bit more. But again, that's more time that goes into your routine. And if you don't do that, you end up with kind of sparse looking curls down on the end. And keep in mind, I have a high density of hair. I have a lot of hair. And yet I still ended up looking like I had very little down on the end there when I went in and raked this product through my hair. Versus when I went in and glazed it over the top, it made my hair look much more filled out and a lot less sparse down on the bottoms. So next, let's talk about the shine of my hair. Which routine gave me more shine? I'm not sure I would say either gave me more shine, but the interesting thing I did note is if you look at a side by side, especially of the back of my head, my hair looks to be different colors. It looks a little bit darker when you look at the raked routine versus the glazed routine. The glazed routine, it looks a little bit lighter. And there could be a couple reasons for that. One is, like I said, my curls clumped a lot tighter when I did the raking routine, and that could have resulted in just kind of a different look to the color of it, maybe added more shadows to it, making it look a little darker, whereas having it more separated out on the second routine maybe made it look a little bit lighter. The other big thing, though, that could have happened here is that when I raked the product through my hair, I may have gone in with too much product. Going in sections like that, especially with a mousse bottle like this, where you hit the button and it kind of just blurts it out at you, is really easy to overdo how much you use, which kind of leads me into my next topic here, which is the feeling of my hair. And that was one thing that actually led me to want to do this particular video, is whenever I use the Not Your Mother's Curl Talk mousse, I always get a really producty feeling to my hair. I stick my fingers in to shake it up and come away just kind of blah, blah. I don't like the feeling. And so I was curious if I glazed it over the top at the end and scrunched it in, would I get that still? And this is what I noted. When I went in and raked the product through my hair, I definitely got that. Like, it was bad. It was very sticky, very tacky, very producty. When I glazed it over my hair, I still got that feeling. So this particular product, regardless of what you do, is going to make your hair feel a little bit producty. It's a little bit of that grit in your hair. That's part of what's probably going to give you a little bit more volume, especially if you're someone like me with like a finer, silkier texture and you struggle with it. That could be a good thing. But something to note, if you don't like that gritty texture, this particular product is going to give it to you almost no matter what way you use it. However, because of the fact that I did get more of that producty feeling when I raked it through, that tells me that I probably did go in with too much product on that first routine. Whereas the second one, it was much easier to go in with less and just work it through my hair that way. And then the last thing I want to touch on at this point anyway is frizz. They're the same. And that being said, I want to normalize frizz because frizz is very normal. We're all going to get a certain amount of it. So I am going to show it to you. However, just know this is very normal for me. This is just how much frizz I get this time of year. The last thing of note that I do want to touch on here is hold, but that kind of leads into our discussion on longevity, because that's the thing, is part of the reason I wanted to do this particular video as well is because I've always kind of assumed that if I rake my hold products through my hair, it's going to give me better longevity. So the question here is that the case? So let's move into day 2 results. So starting off with the wash day number 1, where I raked the product through my hair, coming back and looking at my hair the second day after I fluffed it up, I was a little bit disappointed. It was a little bit flatter, didn't really have a whole lot of volume to it, and the waves had stretched out pretty bad. The curls had clumped even tighter, and really just huge, big sausage clumps. And again, I could have separated them out to get a more full, voluminous look, but again, that's one more step that you have to go through. Now, things to keep in mind here, longevity is definitely impacted by whether or not you go in with too much product. I've done a couple of videos on how to know if you've used too much product, so definitely check those out. I'll make sure to link them above and down below as well. But when you go in with too much product, it weighs your hair down, especially if you have a finer texture like mine, a silkier texture like mine, a wavier texture like mine. It just drags it down, stretches it out. I do feel like with the mousse on the first routine, I did go in with too much product. The results may have been different had I not, but it is much harder to do with a mousse, so that's something we need to keep in mind. Moving into wash day number 2, the day 2 results on the glazing routine, that's where I'm at right now. And I mean, honestly, the comparison is night and day, if you ask me. This looks a lot better than the first routine did. I feel like the waves have held together a lot better. The curls look a lot nicer, partially because they started more separated out. They have clumped up a lot more now, but because they were more separated, the clumps are still pretty reasonable. Again, I could go through and separate some of these out if I really wanted to. I'm not going to at this point though, because I really like the way it looks. The volume is still really good as well, whereas on the previous routine, I didn't really get a ton of volume out of it. The frizz is fine. It's about what I would expect for my hair. So overall, I would say that this turned out pretty darn good, and I'm happy with the longevity of it. So let's go ahead and move into kind of my final thoughts and conclusions and my recommendations as to whether or not you should rake or glaze a mousse through your hair. So what should you do? Should you rake it through your hair? Should you glaze a mousse over your hair? What is the answer? Unfortunately, I can't really give you one. And the reason for that is because there's not really a right answer. And I say that in almost every single comparison video is I personally can like one result over the other, but as has shown time and again, every time I make one of these videos, there's always people in the comments that have different opinions. Some people like routine A, some people like routine B. It just comes down to your personal preferences. Do you like more volume? Do you like more definition? Do you like more elongation? Do you like more shrinkage? There's so many things that go into it, and personal preference is a big part of it. Some people may prefer to just rake a mousse through the hair, and other people may prefer to glaze it just based off of their own personal preferences. The other thing to keep in mind too is I kind of put mousses into two different categories. There's the mousses that when you put in your hand and you work them down, they kind of turn them into a very serumy, liquidy texture. And then there's ones like this, where you put them in your hand, you work them down, and they just don't work down. They stay really foamy and bubbly and white. In my opinion, from my personal experience of all the mousses that I've tried in the past on their own, which I've done a lot because I've done a lot of comparisons with mousses. I've done like the Herbal Essence mousses, I've done the Pantene mousses, and I've done a couple videos where I just took random mousses and tried them. And what I have found is those serumy ones, the ones that really break down, one, they're easier to not overdo. You're not as likely to put too much in your hair. So raking those through is a little easier. And two, it's easier to get less of them. So again, you're not going to be as likely to go in with too much product. Whereas ones like the Curl Talk mousse, as well as the Curlsmith Invincible mousse, and I believe the Cake mousse is also in this category, those really don't break down. And I find that those are easier to glaze over the top of your hair. Now, other things you can keep in mind to kind of equalize this out, if you don't go in with too much product, that's going to equalize it out just a little bit more. You could always put other products into this routine to help you out. So if you like the looks of the glazing the mousse over better, but you're concerned about hold, you could go in with a gel and do a gel mousse routine, which I actually have a video on whether you should do gel mousse or mousse gel. Check that out if you're curious. But using a gel first, especially if it's a more liquidy, runny gel to rake through your hair, that's going to give you that slip for your brush defining, and it's going to help give you a little bit more longevity potentially. Could be a good option if you like to rake products through your hair and you're concerned that just scrunching in a mousse isn't going to give you enough hold. Other options are things like if you do like to rake a mousse through your hair, but you don't like the kind of big sausagey clumps, you could, while it's still wet, go in with a comb and just comb it through once. Help separate those out before you even dry it, or you could go in and separate them after they are done. For me personally, I find with these kind of foamy mousses that don't really break down, they're just much easier to overdo. So for myself personally going forward, I think it comes down to two things. One, the texture of the product. Is this product going to be one that breaks down or not? Because like I've said in the past, with the ones that get really serumy, I get really good results out of them when breaking them through my hair. However, with products like this that don't really break down, I don't get good results if I rake it, so I would glaze it. The second thing that I would keep in mind is, am I pairing this with something else? If I'm going to use a curl cream to help give me more curl enhancement, I might opt for just glazing and scrunching the mousse in at the end of the routine. Or again, if you're going in with a gel and doing a gel mousse routine, scrunching the mousse in at the end could be a good option as well. So there's a lot of options. Again, it really comes down to personal preferences. Y'all will have to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. How do you prefer to use a mousse, and which results did you like better? Do you have any further thoughts that I haven't touched on here? And then the last thing that I wanted to note here is normally I do post every single Friday. I've been a little out of the routine lately. I might have to skip next Friday again. We will see. We will see. The reason I filmed this particular video is actually, it was unintentional. I went in and I raked this mousse through my hair because I had every intention of comparing the Not Your Mother's Curl Talk mousse with the Not Your Mother's Plump for Joy mousse and just seeing which one I liked better. And because I didn't really like the results that I got there, I thought this would be a good opportunity to try it. However, because I'm already here, I probably will still do that comparison next, but comparisons take a long time to edit. There's a lot more that goes into it. Not only that, but Mother's Day is coming up, so it might be 2 weeks between videos again, so I apologize for that. I am getting back into the flow of things, however, so if you do like content like this, please do like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and hopefully I will see you next time.